Mahmoud Abbas's reaction to the Goldstone Report, and I wanted to know your opinions on why he responded in the way that he did. And obviously, that a lot of Palestinians feel very betrayed by that. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, you know, considering the fact that the Israeli population is moving so far to the right, and even that a human rights organization like B'Tselem is feeling pressured by that, a lot of what you spoke about tonight I've read in Haaretz, and you know, I've been very impressed with the fact that they've been so outspoken and vocal and honest about this, and I was wondering what your thoughts are on how they are able to get away with this sort of reporting in such a right-wing, closed-off environment.
As to your questions about the Goldstone Report, it was never quite clear why the so-called Palestinian so-called authority tried to kill the Goldstone Report. The first speculation was that Abbas, that the Israelis had actual tapes of Abbas urging the Israelis to destroy Gaza. That was a claim that was made. It seems not to be true. The second claim that was made was that the U.S. put pressure on him to kill the report in the Human Rights Council. According to sources which I consider to be very good, it's probably not true either. That Abbas is such an obedient slave that you don't even have to tell him what to do. He knows what to do without doing that. And then they moved, as you know, to kill it. There was a huge uproar among the Palestinians, and it was reversed. But I feel now it's being just killed in another way, because the Goldstone Report is slowly moving away from center stage, and all the focus now is on whether the Palestinians will declare a state, and the forthcoming statement from the EU, what they're going to say regarding the declaration of a Palestinian state. Today, Haaretz published the current version of the EU statement, which is not bad. It calls for a Palestinian state in the whole of the West Bank and Gaza, with East Jerusalem as the capital. It does explicitly say, I hope they keep that East Jerusalem as the capital in the final version. There's going to be huge pressure on the EU to remove it. I don't think they can, because that's been their consistent position every year in the UN. And again, Goldstone was quite good. In the report, it refers to East Jerusalem as part of Palestinian occupied territory. So that was another strong aspect of the Goldstone Report. But the focus is again going to be on the so-called peace process, and it's going to move away from the Goldstone, and I think that's a disaster. It's not a disaster, it's just more of the same. Because what's going to happen? The Palestinians will declare a state, then the Israelis will declare that we're annexing the settlement blocks, and then the US will come in and say, well, obviously, we need to negotiate. And we'll be right back where we started from. You know? It's the whole problem with the way the whole process is conceived. That you can resolve this issue by declarations and political and diplomatic maneuvering, rather than trying to mobilize people to effect change. And that was, again, one of the things I admired about Gandhi. When people would ask him, what do you think the British are going to do? What do you think the British are going to do? Gandhi used to answer, I don't care what the British are thinking. It's just totally irrelevant. It's not what they're thinking that's important. It's what we do that's important. If we get our act right, if we do the right thing, then they'll have to do what we want them to do. But you don't do politics by investing yourself in saviors. Even if it were true, for argument's sake, even if it were true that the EU and the US were tomorrow to give the Palestinians the state, what kind of state would it be? It would be a state run by a gang of thugs and hoodlums and torturers and murderers. Is that what you want? Is that what you struggled all these decades for? And that was another thing that was good about Gandhi. He said, I don't want to replace the British with a bunch of Indian crooks. That's not what it's about. He said independence, he used to call it not Swaraj, which means independence, but Hind Swaraj, which means like full independence. He says, for me, full independence means empowering the ordinary people. If it's just going to be a bunch of Indians replacing the British, who needs it? And that's what would happen if you have a granting of it from above. So number one, I don't think it's going to happen that way. Number two, even if it were to happen that way, I don't think it's particularly desirable. So it'll be Mr. Dahlen who's in charge, rather than Mr. Netanyahu. Oh, either way, it's Netanyahu when the U.S. is in charge. But no, I don't really think that's what politics is about. And for those who think it's what it's about, I can only respectfully disagree.